Hi, I'm Sarah Moon, the founder and director of Write Your Roots. I started Write Your Roots while a doctoral candidate in English rhetoric and composition at the University of Connecticut. As a scholar of rhetoric, I was really interested in how community writing and performance could be used to raise awareness and even help incite action around matters of local social concern. In this particular case, food justice and sustainability. The first Write Your Roots invited Willimantic, Connecticut community members to write original monologues about their relationship to food and perform those monologues for a public audience. Our first performances took place at the Willimantic Town Hall and Click Community Kitchen in June of 2017. It was a great success. And when I moved to Rhode Island to start a new job, I decided that I wanted to try to replicate it here. I reached out to Farm Fresh Rhode Island, and they helped to promote the event to potential participants. In January of 2020, we had our first meeting, and we began the process of writing and then revising scripts. We rehearsed in February of 2020, and we were ready to get into the theater and perform on Saturday, March 14th. However, hearing that date, I'm sure many of you will recognize what happened. Everywhere things were starting to shut down because of COVID-19, and we decided to postpone. When we regrouped this summer, we decided that the safest, most sensible choice would be to switch our format from live performance in a theater to a video production. Not all of us were able to make this shift, and for those folks who aren't able to perform in what you'll see in this video, we'll be featuring their work, their beautiful words on our Write Your Roots blog. Write Your Roots is a celebration of food traditions and food passions, but it's also a hopeful way to support efforts toward a healthier food future. My hope is that this project could be replicable in communities around the country who are looking to raise awareness and build bonds toward local efforts in support of progressive food initiatives. As J.R.R. Tolkien said, if more of us valued food and cheer and song above hoarded gold, it would be a merrier world. We hope that you'll take part in such a world with us here today and enjoy the show.
Now pay attention, Nicholas, she used to say. Did my mother know, back then, on those Saturday mornings over 30 years ago? Was she trying to set me up to be who I am today? The questions linger in my head as I slowly and mindfully slice these onions to saute for my French onion tart, or pissaladier, as she still refers to it, making sure to put great emphasis on those last two syllables. You see, Mom is Italian to the core, but having been a French major in college, never shied away from an opportunity to showcase her inner Francophile and try something new. I would pull a kitchen chair up to the counter where Mom's mise en place would always be set. Back then, I didn't know that specific organization of kitchen items even had a name, just that it must have been the way all cooking was supposed to begin. More or less, I just saw it as an open invitation to snack on different bowls of shredded cheeses and olives, the latter of which I used to love placing on my fingertips. Actually, which I still do whenever there are kids around. I remember by that third handful of shredded cheese, I'd be met with the morning's first utterance of, "Nicholas, now pay attention," accompanied by a little love tap on my left wrist. Now, as I take bites of Gruyere, in between each sliced onion for my tart, I can't help but think of how to this day, I can't stand not having items aligned and in proper order prior to cooking. My displeasure for kitchen organization can often be surmised by the dyspeptic look that overtakes my face. You see, I need to have everything aligned in front of me, rather than have to leave my station 8 times in the midst of preparation to get each item needed. Just as on that Saturday morning, all those years ago, it's about 9:30 a.m. Still early for most, especially for a weekend morning. But for Mom, whose day had begun roughly 5 hours before, this was time to get started on some lunch. And by extension, pull me away from the Three Stooges reruns being simulcasted on the snowy, bunny-eared black and white television in the living room. Those were the good old days, when you could watch 2 shorts in a half hour without any commercial interruptions. I was only about 5 years old, still decades before my interest/borderline obsessive nature with food became apparent. Perhaps this planted the seed for developing that inquisitive, never-satiated appetite with looking into food's roles in other cultures. The ticking sounds my parents' old compact oven would make while warming to temp were like church bells, summoning me to begin the day before it got too late. If the oven and its elements were the bell tower, then its scent of oil-splattered walls getting warmer will light the incense to arouse my senses.
Get your equipment on. Ready, men? Contact! Contact! Little on to the left. All right, stand that way a little now. Take it away.
I would have only just finished my farina porridge with syrup and butter, but once those smells came into contact with my nose, I couldn't help but be excited for what was to come. Sometimes we cook savory, and sometimes sweet. Like when we make Big Bird's banana bread, a recipe culled from the oil and butter stained pages of my old Sesame Street cookbook. See, Mom always paid attention to which items were likely on their way out and wouldn't make it into the next week. So that was a great way to use up all those overly ripened bananas. Which actually reminds me, I should probably think of something to do with all these leftover roasted beets that are in the fridge. Maybe I can toss them into a baked pasta or a frittata, something maybe we could have for lunch on Sunday and carry into Monday. In any case, this morning is for pizza. It's not fancy, nor overly complicated. Yet try as I may, I still can't quite seem to replicate hers. I like to think it's because I do not have her pans, but deep down, I suspect it is because my hands are not hers. Kitchen time was Mom's way of providing an activity for me to keep me occupied and out of my father's way while I tended to the outside chores that escaped him during the week. It's not like she really needed help with cooking. I mean, honestly, even if she made a mistake or missed an ingredient, it's not like us kids would know, unless she actually said something. Maybe she was trying to impart something else, apart from just keeping me out of my father's hair. Kitchen mechanics, those invaluable life skills that served me so well, or that embodied knowledge that can only be passed down through shared experience. These are the themes I think of now while offering attention to the memory. And I'm sure back then, on that Saturday morning, my mind and my stomach were only paying attention to one thing, and that was to make pizza. When those words, pay attention, settled into my ears, it was a call for me to mimic her motions on that counter. You see, we were creating something from pieces, not unlike the Legos I used to enjoy playing with as a kid. And just like how each new contraption I'd make would bring excitement for my parents, I knew that so too with that pizza, especially for my dad, whose love for that particular version, coupled with his morning sweat and toil, must have felt like a sort of victor's prize. To this day, I still find myself seeking those initial reactions others make upon tasting food, paying especially close attention to when it's something I make. This isn't to mean I seek praise, but rather just a sense of knowing that something my hands created, those digital extensions of the heart, could have the ability to satiate something deeper than one's own physical hunger. Sometimes there is no reaction, but I don't take it personally. I just chalk it up to someone not paying attention to the action at hand. Alas, not everyone is like me. Seems to block out and lose himself in the world around him with each first bite. I need those moments, though, for they are what help me taste. And after all, what is taste, really? But when we offer attention toward our own personal recipe for memory and meaning. It's been over 6 months now since I last adorned one of those canvases of dough. Funny how something that once seemed so humble, composed of little more than yeast, flour, salt, water, some onions, some cheese, olives, a little thyme, and a lot of oil, morphs into something more regal when the ingredients aren't readily available. As we saw during the first few months, transitioning into the current pandemic we're in. All of a sudden, romanticizing cooking in a time of panic seemed out of place, even though it still remained my escape from the bete noir, as you might say, that's been the year 2020. Maybe escape is the wrong word, as it kind of conjures up a certain prestige and privilege I try to avoid projecting. So many, especially now, cook out of necessity while in the midst of juggling 5 or 6 other things at the same time, let alone the anxieties that come along with it. It isn't a leisure for them, just as it likely wasn't for my mom on those early Saturday mornings so long ago when she'd have me in the kitchen as her little sidekick, trying to keep me occupied. It's been internally difficult to offer expression through that gastronomic language without feeling like I'm committing classism or leaving out the colonial significance that it's attached to so many of the meals we regularly eat, without offering proper acknowledgement for how they and their ingredients arrived at our disposal. Maybe that's the main lesson, though, that's to be garnered from these current times. And what Mom might have been trying to impart all along. To get me to pay attention to the people and their stories that make up this world, and to empathize with them. Her favorite poet, Mary Oliver, would say that that's the beginning of devotion.
Robin isn't the most domestic of the girls, you know. She doesn't know how to cook, and she really can't clean. These were the words that my mother said to my husband-to-be 35 years ago. And at the time, she was right. I was a 19-year-old college student who was intent on reading, writing, studying, and learning, and love got in the way. And next thing you know, I am married with a child on the way. But my young, naive mind didn't allow for the fact that because my husband worked full-time, I would be called upon to keep house, as they say. Since I went from living at home to living in a dorm, I never cooked for myself. Growing up, my mom always did all the cooking. Once she started working full-time, I was occasionally called on to preheat the oven and put in a casserole. And the first time I tried making spaghetti, I literally had no idea how to boil water. But after her previous comment, I didn't bother to call my mom. Instead, I called an older married friend. There I was, book smart, well-read, but the only time I spent with a cookbook was following the Christmas cookie recipes in my mom's Betty Crocker cookbook. See, despite my mom's total control over the kitchen, she did allow me to bake. And I loved baking Christmas cookies. Because she started working full time, it wore her down enough that she actually recruited my help to make the whole variety of Christmas cookies that she wanted for the trays to put out on Christmas Eve with enough to give away. I loved baking. I loved following the recipes. And because of my love of baking, the first month that I was married, I bought myself a copy of the Betty Crocker cookbook, the same one my mom had. It got a lot of good use, as you can see. And at the same time, of course, I'm an English major in college. So I am reading, and I'm reading J.D. Salinger and even some Shakespeare. And later, with my son, I'm reading Mike Mulligan and his Steam Shovel, or The Very Hungry Caterpillar, a few family favorites. And you'll be glad to know that all that reading has paid off for me. I've worked as a librarian in public libraries for the past 20 years. Back then, my cooking skills improved slowly. Most nights you'd find me, a young mom with 3 sons eventually, making macaroni and cheese, fajitas, other family favorites. And of course, the cookie jar was always full. No one complained about my cooking. My boys grew up strong and healthy, all athletes. But no one could ever accuse me of being into food, like my sister and my mother. Both of them loved to entertain and always wowed the family with the food they prepared at holidays. My cooking was functional food. Eating out wasn't part of my young family's routine either, because we were, for many years, a one-income family. I did start collecting recipes along the way. Someone gave me a blank spiral-bound notebook into which I transcribed recipes from my mom and a few others. That book got so worn out that eventually I saved those recipes and put them into this spiral-bound notebook, which I still have. I know in here I've got the carrot cake recipe from my mom and Nikki's cream cheese frosting recipe that we all loved so much. But nothing in this book specifically reflects my mom's Italian heritage. She never took the time to specifically teach my sister and brother and I any of the recipes from her own childhood with her Italian family. But I did get one recipe from her side of the family. Her aunts always made a wonderful Easter ham pie that was filled with ricotta, provolone, eggs, ham. It was delicious. And once my young family tasted it, I got the recipe from these aunts so that I could make it myself as well. Sadly, that's the one and only recipe that I took the time to get from my aunts. I really look back now and think about what a fantastic opportunity I missed out on by learning about Italian cooking from them. On the other side of my family is my Irish grandmother. And she always had plenty of food when we went there for holidays too. None of it specifically Irish, unless you count the potatoes. But I did get from her Irish soda bread recipe, and I make that every year at St. Patrick's Day. While raising my sons, completing my bachelor's and master's degrees, plus working outside the home, I continued to bake. I taught myself to bake a bread recipe, which I still make, and it's from the King Arthur flour bag. And of course, there were always cookies in the jar. All that baking caught up to my waistline, though, and about 20 years ago, I shifted into baking and cooking more healthy recipes. Now, fast forward to 10 years ago, and my youngest son goes off to college. I remarried and decided to share cooking with my husband, Tom. Tom will eat anything, and he definitely knew how to fend for himself in the kitchen in a very basic way, making pasta or clam sauce from a jar. But one day we were watching the Today Show together, and we saw Mark Bittman. So we decided to buy this book, How to Cook Everything. And we started choosing a recipe together to make. And this became something that we both enjoyed doing together. Believe it or not, trying new recipes actually became part of my job as a librarian. A few years back, I started a cookbook book club at the library where I was working. And each month I would assign a different cookbook for the group to read. Each person would select a recipe from it, make that recipe, and bring it to the meeting where we would try the food and discuss the recipes. It was a perfect combination to combine my love of reading with my newfound love of cooking. Sadly, the pandemic has put this program on hold, like so many other wonderful activities over the past few months. Sometimes it's hard to believe that I am the same person who didn't know how to boil water. I really love cooking now. I look forward to making things on the weekend and getting home after work to chop vegetables for a recipe that I've prepared ahead of time. And I can't believe that nowadays my mom is actually impressed with the cooking that I do. I think she's also really impressed that my husband cooks, but that's okay with me. I love talking to her on the phone now that she lives in Florida year round. And I always tell her about what we're cooking. And she's often given me some great advice for recipes, which I appreciate. Nowadays, I'm older and wiser, and I would never miss out on an opportunity to learn from someone who has more cooking experience than I do. Thanks, Mom.
What are we bringing to the Savitskys this Friday night? Nearly every Wednesday or Thursday afternoon or evening, we get a call from her friend Eve to discuss what we'll bring to the Friday night Shabbat potluck dinner at their house. It's usually Maya, my wife, who does the negotiations. It's during or after that phone call I ask her, what did we say we bring? Most of the time we agree on some general dish, like a soup or main course or a dessert, so there's some room for improvisation. Sometimes we'll even do the meal at our house, or make something they usually make, like the challah, or a special snowball coconut birthday cake for our friend Amanda, or a stuffed homemade tofu turkey, if there's stuff that's come up in our hosts' lives that would make it a lot easier if I made one of their dishes that time instead of David, Eve's husband, who usually makes those things. We also need to know how many and who's coming. Since one regular guest doesn't eat peppers, another is lactose intolerant, and the Savitskys are vegetarians, while Maya and I eat kosher meat and keep a kosher home. Plus, we need to know what other people are bringing, so that what we make fits the mix. We don't want too many noodle, rice, bean, or squash dishes, staples of vegetarian potlucks. Desserts are a different story. We're celebrating. It's Shabbat, or another holiday. So the more the merrier. Maya and I will often bring unasked an extra dessert that we were inspired to cook. A chocolate Nutella babka or rugelach around Hanukkah, a strawberry rhubarb crisp when those ingredients are in season, or lemon squares. Or something we want to try out from a new cookbook, like the Medjool date biscotti from Adina Sussman's Sababa. And we always count on Jerry, ironically, the lactose intolerant regular, to bring several varieties of ice cream when he comes. For us, cooking something we made from scratch is almost assumed. It's our way of honoring the Sabbath and honoring our guest. That's not to say we don't home cook most of our meals, nearly every day, especially breakfast and dinner. But speaking for myself, it's a matter of pride and principle that I make myself what I bring to the potluck, or when giving gifts of food in general. I want it to be of myself, something that I made with my own hands, crafted with my own wit and skills. My edible gifts of love must be an art project, or better, a heart project. When I make food for others, a simple hummus, a time-consuming sourdough bread or fluten pastry with layers of poppy, walnut, and apple fillings for the Jewish New Year for the trees, or the whole wheat challahs I often bake for and sometimes with my Wheaton students and colleagues for campus celebrations, it is partly of and for myself. I'd be lying if I denied I am elated by the accolades, the oohs and ahs. That's beautiful, and that's the best I've tasted. But it's not only that. I love seeing the appreciation in the expressions of people for whom I've cooked, especially when I've paid attention to what they like and their dietary constraints. Vegan, vegetarian, gluten-free, dairy-free, kosher, pepper-free, cilantro-free, not too spicy, super spicy, and meaty. And there's something special about cooking to order, even something not necessarily to my taste. Like the snowball birthday cake for Amanda, or the confetti cake made out of the yellow cake mix and multicolored jellos for Maya's Bubby, her grandmother, some years ago. Or it might be something I'd too like to eat, like the Mary Berry Fraser cake Maya asked me to bake for her birthday, decorated with a marzipan cat, because she loves cats, but is allergic to the furry ones. The Fraser cake has several parts, and preparation of each and assembling them is very fussy. It was a technical challenge on one episode of the Great British Baking Show from the co-host and judge Mary Berry's recipe. It's a 2-tiered yellow layer cake with pastry cream sandwiched between, with the ring of sliced strawberries, the fraise of the Fraser cake, bordering the pastry cream layer in a pretty design, with the cut-sided red triangles facing outward with the pale yellow cream behind. It requires ingredients and equipment, which we don't usually have in the kitchen, like caster sugar that I had to make by running regular sugar through the food processor to make it super fine, and acetate paper to encircle the cake when you chill it, to give it that strawberry pastry cream pattern effect. And techniques I don't usually use. The cake is a genoise, for which you have to beat the eggs over heated water to give the cake layers the right volume. And I don't usually pipe pastry cream in my baking, but it's necessary here to get it between the strawberry triangle slice tips. I had to make special shopping trips to get the marzipan and the fancy food coloring for the molded cat decoration Maya wanted, and to find acetate paper. I ended up adapting some plastic pastry bags that I bought to make the collar. In other words, it required extraordinary effort to make this cake for Maya. It was a several-day process, drawing upon all my baking and artistic aesthetic skills and experience. Different skills were required for each layer. And did I mention that I love pastry cream? That in any dessert almost makes it the effort worthwhile? It took time and technique to make each layer, baking the genoise in the oven, cooking the pastry cream on the stovetop, cooling, assembly, and time for it to set in the refrigerator. And luck! Not every genoise I've tried has been successful. And yet, when Maya told me she wanted me to make her a Mary Berry Fraser cake for her birthday, we'd be celebrating at Shabbat dinner at the Savitsky's, I embraced it both as my own technical challenge and as a labor of love. Sure, I'd have an appreciative audience even beyond Maya if I actually pulled it off. But also, as is my custom in cooking for others, I liked that I was making something by design for Maya's taste, especially because it was complicated. I made it, it worked, looked beautiful, tasted delicious, and the dinner crowd loved it. Maya especially. Yes, it was a project, but definitely a heart project. We still have the cat. Potlucks lend themselves beautifully and satisfyingly to this kind of "you made this for me" sharing. But it's even more than that. When I make something myself, it's not really myself alone. I put together ingredients that did not come from me, but from my garden or from farms, from workers who produced them, and from the plants and animals, the natural ecosystems who gifted something of themselves to me. To cook things from others is to find myself in between, in a network of relationships that give me life, to whom I give life, who make life worth living. Such is the alchemy that makes cooking myself for others, with others, truly my heart work. A COVID postscript. My Friday night dinner group with the Savitskys has become my pod since the COVID-19 lockdown began in mid-March. We basically followed our own set of phases 1 through 3, paralleling Rhode Island's plan. We began very conservatively at first, remaining at home, but cooking things for one another on Friday night, which we brought to one another's homes, where we ate separately. Then, masked walks to the Savitskys and their neighbors, Kathy and Ira, where we shared snacks outside, socially distant by their pool, but unmasked. Then Friday dinners, and on other nights inside the Savitskys' house, when it was too hot or buggy. We had a trust and respect for one another's standards of caution. Bottom line, I realized in hindsight that given so many other restrictions on our travel and socialization, our pod and the opportunities to cook for and eat with one another in our small group became my lifeline that has been getting me through the pandemic times, keeping me in that network of relationships that give me life, to whom I give life, who make life worth living. Our life-sustaining heart work.
I am consumed by eating. I navigate layers of complexity in all of my relationships to food, whether it's my own personal history with food, the food system, or the current work I do to feed myself and others. Like all of us, my connection to food is rooted in childhood memories. I recall my mom's Thai noodle salad and the giant metal bowl she'd serve it in. I can feel the excitement when my dad would make pizza and the hot oven would set off the fire alarm. I remember my Nana's chocolate chip cookies and how eating seemed a simple act of pleasure when I was a young child. I was fortunate to always have enough food, and yet I find the thread of hunger that weaves through many of my memories. I'm hungry. I reach up to check the goodie cabinet. Locked. Have a banana. My mom issues her typical reply. I don't want a banana. I want something good. I'm in the 7th grade and my parents are going through a dramatic divorce. I've learned some new words this year, such as repossession, foreclosure, and bankruptcy. My mom is out grabbing dinner from the drive-thru. For a short moment of grace, she is alone. The drive-thru provides a refuge between her work as a janitor and the 4 kids waiting for her at home. She brings me a fried chicken sandwich, and I don't care that the lettuce is wilted because I'm in it for that first blissful bite where the hot chicken meets the mayo-smeared bun. We eat dinner in front of the TV while Mom goes to her room. Every night we are fed, but I don't feel truly satisfied. A sense of hunger returns sooner than seems possible. What am I really hungry for? On Wednesday, Dad picks us up and we head to the Elks Club for spaghetti and meatball night. The bowls of salad arrive along with our sodas, and we drink the soda so fast that Dad begins his lecture about empty calories again. I don't get it. There's free refills. He's a triathlete and his lean physique is a sharp contrast to mine. But even with all of his healthy eating, he still loves dessert and a good bargain. So after dinner, we head to McDonald's for hot fudge sundaes. The middle school cafeteria is a busy place, but I still feel like people are staring at me. I don't want to move from my seat to get lunch, because if I get up, the boys at the next table will notice, and when I sit back down, they'll jump up from their seats to pretend that my weight displaced them. It's so embarrassing, and I just want to hide. I have no control over my body or my choices with food, and I feel powerless. Will you go grab me a slice of pizza? I'm the fat girl in school. I haven't learned that my weight is influenced by other factors like stress, hormones, or genetics. So I pile all the blame on myself. I internalize my guilt and shame and swallow it down with food that feels good. The sweet and salty combination of soda and chips, or the richness of a chocolate candy bar with creamy caramel. No one has told me that food is complicated, but I'm starting to learn for myself. I press the button on the machine and a bubbly stream flows into my cup. My college cafeteria stopped carrying Pepsi products, so I switched from Mountain Dew to Diet Coke. It has a strange chemical taste, but it satisfies my craving for sweet carbonation. Plus, my friends and I think it's funny to say that we're going on a Diet Coke diet. I'm 22 and it's the fall after graduation. I just started Weight Watchers with my sister. I've always wanted to lose weight, but felt too embarrassed or scared to diet. I kept waiting for a miracle, and the 20 pounds I lost on the Diet Coke diet feels like a miracle. It's like I've been handed a balloon and I can feel my feet start to lift off the ground. This levity, this lightness, it feels so good that I'm determined to lose more weight. I make lists of everything I eat and assign points to each item. I actually enjoy this obsessive tracking and recording, and for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm in control of what I'm eating. It's a hot day in August as I begin another commute home from Providence to Newport. The excitement and boost of confidence from losing weight has faded, and I realize that my transformation has not been complete. I lost another 60 pounds, but still carry the emotional weight of a loaded history with food in my body. I work to decipher conflicting messages, to figure out the best way to eat. I'm tempted to categorize foods as good or bad, but this can lead to guilt on some days and false virtue on others, eliminating the space between these opposites. Do I have to assign morality to my food in order to eat well? It's been 2 years since I moved to the city. I'm in the kitchen trying to remember which spices belong to who. The spice rack is a collection shared by myself and 2 roommates. The kitchen is central to our relationship with each other and our housemates. We come from different backgrounds and are heading in a variety of directions, but we gather through the rituals and rhythms of food. We make dressing and drizzle it over a salad with strawberries, walnuts, and feta. We rescue forgotten vegetables from the fridge, and they become dinner with help from a can of coconut milk and a jar of curry paste. We learn how not to compost in a trash can in the driveway. We share our favorite foods, and I discover that I love beets and develop a deep devotion to goat cheese. We plant seeds in the ground and wait with hope and curiosity. I learned how to slice open an avocado, use a sharp knife to pop out the pit, and scoop out the smooth green flesh to mash into guacamole with plenty of lime juice and salt. I sprinkle a little mango on top and bring it to the table. One part of a perfect meal with friends. It's 5:30 a.m. as I head out the door with my bike, riding from west to east. I make it up the 2 big hills and arrive at the YMCA. After 15 years of bathing suit avoidance, I reunited with my love of swimming. As I swim back and forth, the repetition gives me space to plan meals, to inspect my mental terrain, or to find pockets of stillness. My membership at the Y emboldens me to try new activities, and before I know it, I'm on a stationary bike in a dark room with loud music and sweaty strangers. My lungs are burning as I feel the power of the fire inside me. My body's imperfections are minimized by appreciation of its strength and resilience. I am amazed at the vitality I feel and the ways in which Providence has supported my ongoing transformation. I spread my roots through this pretty little city as I walk and bike my way through its different neighborhoods. But I wonder, have I become a new person or just a stronger version of the same self? I turned 31 a week ago, which means my newborn baby is 9 days old. My body has undergone another transformation and developed new cravings along the way. Savory oatmeal with an egg on top for breakfast and ice cream every night. And now, as my body continues to change and nourish another life, I find new ways to satisfy this latest iteration of my hunger. I make molasses bread with walnuts and raisins, hoping to replenish some of the iron that was depleted during pregnancy. The toaster ticks in the early morning and an aroma of cinnamon fills the air. When the toast is ready, I spread on butter and it does that thing butter does, where it melts in pools in the cracks of the toast, but still maintains a few solid bits. I eat the whole piece standing next to the toaster, relishing in a moment of solitude. My mom is 60 and I'm pregnant with my second child. A few days ago, she had her hands on my belly as she talked to the baby. But today, she's struggling to stay alert. We've decided that it's time for hospice care. We think we know what this decision means, but we don't know what to do. I start to poke around in her cupboards, feeling the urge to bake something. I see her peanut butter, the same jar that I dip a spoon into every time I visit. I begin a familiar process by creaming the peanut butter with butter and sugar until it's light and fluffy. I add ingredients and watch as the dough takes shape. I fold in chocolate chips and scoop dough onto sheet pans. I open the oven and feel the heat flush my face as I reach into the light. I bake cookies. I bake cookies and they don't change anything that I wish I could change, but they comfort me with their sweet warmth, and there are plenty to share. I'm 36, but I keep thinking I'm 37. I also keep thinking about how my pants felt tight yesterday. Have I gained weight? Is that what happens when you're officially middle-aged? I should stop baking cookies. My thought spiral is interrupted by the oven timer. I pull out a tray of roasted eggplant. I test one, and I know it's done because it has that perfect variation of texture. Crispy and squishy with a slight chew from the skin. Plus, it's hot and spicy and salty. I stand at the stove eating one after the other, and I realize I'm not just eating my vegetables for their nutritional value. I'm eating to feed a deeper part of myself. But what is that place? And why is it so hungry? We've been sheltering at home for 10 weeks. COVID-19 has cast its net across the globe, taking lives and spreading fear and uncertainty. We exist remotely from our friends, family, and prior routines. We are a nuclear family, creating and releasing energy upon each other in an endless cycle. We can't hide from each other, so I retreat to the kitchen, not only to feed our family of 4, but for the sense of control and comfort it provides. I gather ingredients and tools and follow the familiar steps to our next meal. I'm at the kitchen sink when I hear the news of George Floyd's death, a heartbreaking event that shifts the spotlight to another glaring instance of racial violence. I'm awakened to the injustices this moment has revealed. The pandemic has opened a fault line where all manner of precariously balanced pieces have tumbled in. Our old normal doesn't exist. But I believe that in its place is an opportunity. I must grow and learn during this period. I must do better. This hunger for growth and change is not a burden. I consider the spectrum of my hunger, how it has fluctuated across my lifespan and continues to change. My appetite propels me toward the kitchen, where I can satisfy my craving for the sensory experiences of cooking. I'm eager to share food with others, closing the space between us as we find commonality in eating. I work to trust in myself, to consume without being consumed by fear or self-doubt. I ask questions to unpeel the layers of satisfaction found in food and eating. My hunger extends beyond my plate. I'm hungry for connection and comfort, for exploration and excitement, to support and be supported. I'm hungry, and I hope you are too.
Perhaps the World Ends Here by Joy Harjo.
The world begins at a kitchen table. No matter what, we must eat to live.
The gifts of earth are brought and prepared, set on the table. So it has been since creation, and it will go on.
We chase chickens or dogs away from it. Babies teethe at the corners. They scrape their knees under it.
It is here that children are given instructions on what it means to be human. We make men at it. We make women.
At this table, we gossip, recall enemies, and the ghosts of lovers.
Our dreams drink coffee with us as they put their arms around our children. They laugh with us at our poor falling down selves, and as we put ourselves back together once again at the table.
This table has been a house in the rain, an umbrella in the sun.
Wars have begun and ended at this table. It is a place to hide in the shadow of terror, a place to celebrate the terrible victory.
We have given birth on this table and have prepared our parents for burial here.
At this table, we sing with joy, with sorrow. We pray of suffering and remorse. We give thanks.
Perhaps the world will end at the kitchen table while we are laughing and crying, eating of the last sweet bite. Perhaps the world.
Really nice.
Okay, here's the foods I like: ice cream, pizza, donuts,